Hello everyone, so welcome back to my channel. Please ignore the weird shadows on my face. That's just because of my window. Anyway, so my previous video basically consisted of my reads of 2022 from Jan to August beginning. So now it's gonna be my reads from August to December read. Alright, let's get into it. So starting off with August, I read Galatea by Marilyn Miller. It's a very tiny book, this much, like a square, and also it had 20 pages, I think. And I'm not going to go much into detail about any of the books because I don't want to spoil the story by mistake, but I'll just tell you if I liked it or not, and I'll just give you the rating of it, so it's up to you, and maybe a small one-liner about the book. So that just follows I think a story about a Greek god, I'm not sure. Okay, so this next set of books that I read was the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman, and I loved it. It's a comic, by the way, so I have to mention that, but yeah, it's my first time reading a comic, and it's yeah, there's really not much to say. It's a very wholesome, fluffy, cute gay romance, and so yeah, I like that. And next book that I read was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and that basically follows the story of a woman who gets cursed by wishing to a god after the dark, and yeah, you just follow the story of her throughout about 300 years, I think. And she is specifically cursed in a way that people won't remember her. She can't make a mark in the world. So anyway, I don't want to spoil more, but that's actually a really good story. So yeah, I would suggest you read it. Next book that I read in August was Be a Triangle by Lily Singh. This is a non-fiction, more self-help kind of book. Okay, so the next book that I read was The Midnight Library, and I gave it 4 stars. That is actually a very nice book. It basically follows how the smallest decisions that you make in life will impact what happens next in your life. So it's more like a parallel universe kind of idea, but not exactly. But then yeah, it's a very helpful book. It tells you, it makes you feel like you're not the only one who's lost in your 20s. And so the final book that I read in August was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I gave it 3 stars. I initially gave it 5 stars, then I brought it down to 4 stars, then I brought it down to 3 stars because I don't know, I maybe got into the hype of the book through Instagram, and then I really loved it at that time. But then when I let it marinate in my head, I don't know, I liked it less and less. And I used to be a very huge fan of Colleen Hoover, but right now I will say that I am not very fond of her. But except It Ends With Us will always be my favorite book. So the last book that I read in August is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, and when I tell you that I fell in love with that book will be an understatement. You can absolutely find out by my words that it was a 5-star read for me, and it was amazing. And it basically follows a PhD graduate or student, yeah, PhD student and her professor, and it has fake dating, and it's just amazing. I don't want to spoil it much, but yes, so that was the last book that I read. And now getting into September. So the first book that I read was another book by Ali Hazelwood, which is Love on the Brain, and I gave it 4 stars. So I didn't love it as much as The Love Hypothesis. I don't know. I think people tend to do this where you read a book by an author and you love it, and that's the first book that you read by the author, and then any other books that you read, you keep comparing it to the first book that you really loved because you kind of know their writing style and you have high expectations. So according to that, I didn't feel it really with Love on the Brain. Anyway, the next set of books that I read was a series called Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and it's a 3-book series and I gave it all 4 stars. So there's Before the Coffee Gets Cold, there's Before the Coffee Gets Cold, Tales from the Cafe, and Before Your Memory Fades. So this book, you can really read it in the order of 1, 3 and 2, or in the order that it was published, that is 1, 2 and 3, and it will still make sense because they do keep bringing back the characters and explaining the past of the character, the history of the character. So, but it's a lovely story where you will understand the importance of closure when it comes to any relationship, and the importance of being open in a relationship and, you know, saying what's on your mind to that person before it's too late. So it's a very lovely story, but yeah, it just lacked something, and it's my first time, it was my first time reading Asian literature, so maybe that had a reason why, you know, I didn't love it, but I would definitely recommend it. It's a good series. Next is a poetry book that I read, which is I Have to Tell You Something, and I gave it 5 stars. It was a really good read, so I don't really have much to say about it, but yeah, it was a good read. So these generally the poetry that I read is kind of simple to understand. It doesn't have a lot of complicated vocabulary or any metaphors, so yeah, I really liked it. And next one that I read was Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. It is also a self-help book, and I gave it 3 stars. I don't know, I'm not really fond of self-help books, so yeah, that's why I gave it that. The next book that I read is I Fell in Love with Hope by Lan Kelly. Oh my god, it was heartbreaking, I'll tell you that much. It's a very heavy book to read, and it has a lot of dark themes. You should probably read the trigger warnings before you start reading the book, but it's a beautiful book, honestly. The writing was so different from what I was used to, and this author is young, and it was their self-published book, but now it's blowing up all over Bookstagram, and it just basically follows a group of young adults who are in a hospital due to illnesses, different illnesses, and how they go about their life and how they bond, and it's just lovely. So yeah, you should give it a read. And the final book that I read in September, which makes it up to total 8 books that I read in September, is The Fine Print. This I have the book of. It's by Lauren Asher. This is the first time that I am reading a book by Lauren Asher. It's actually a series of books. It's the Dreamland Billionaire series. This is the first book of the Dreamland Billionaire series, and it basically follows Rowan and Zara. Rowan is a millionaire, and he basically has to manage a theme park company, and she's an employee, so it's like the boss-employee relationship, and Grumpy Sunshine and enemies to lovers, sort of. But yeah, it's a good book. Okay, so that is the end of September. Now we come to October. So October, the first book that I read is obviously a continuation of the Dreamland Billionaire series, which is Terms and Conditions, and this follows Declan and Iris. So basically the Dreamland Billionaire series, they're all 3 brothers, Rowan, Declan and Kane. Sorry, not Kane, Cal. Sorry, Kane is their surname. So I gave this book 4.5 stars, but it's very close to 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book, actually. Yeah, the romance was great. It's basically like a marriage of convenience kind of thing. But yeah, you know how it goes. So it's actually a really lovely book, and the FMC is a black woman, so that was really nice to see, because I've not read many books with the main characters being African American, so that was really nice to read. Okay, so the next book that I read was a poetry book. That was I Saw You as a Flower, and I also gave it 5 stars. It is amazing, so just read it. The next book that I read in October, yeah, Verity by Colleen Hoover. And initially I gave it 5 stars, then I brought it down to 4 stars, and now it's 3 stars, because there is nothing, I didn't love this book or I didn't hate this book, but I felt intense emotions while reading this book. I will give you that much. So that is exactly why I was so confused about what to rate this book, because oh my dear Lord, it made me question some things. I was a changed woman after this. I am still a changed woman after reading this book. This book, it just messes with you mentally, and you might have to schedule a therapy session beforehand. Yeah, if you want to discuss this book, please let me know in the comments. We shall discuss this book, and I will make a whole video about this book. But so next book that I read in October was Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney, and I gave it 4 stars. So again, I'm speaking a lot about every book, and I don't want to make this video like 1 hour long, but yeah, this is my first time reading Sally Rooney book, and basically one thing that I have to say is her books don't have quotes for dialogue, so yeah, beware before you get into the reading her books. But anyway, it's very real life, like very close to reality, very relatable, very honest and true and open. All her books are, all her stories are. So I think for that, give it a read. But you might have to take breaks in between, because you might have to take time to process what is happening in this book. I mean, like the writing style. So yeah. And final book that I read in October is It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, which is the second book of the It Ends With Us series, and second and only book. It's a duology. I mean, do I have to say a lot? That's how much I've tapped this book, and I gave it 5 stars. So there's that. So okay, now we come to November and December. On October, I read 5 books. Okay, so November I read 9 books. So the first thing was a very chunky book, Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. It is a small town romance, and it has very sarcastic, funny, witty main characters, and so I enjoyed the book. But it's a very chunky book, so you might have to think about it before getting into it. But I gave it 4 stars. It's a good read. Next thing I read was Nothing More to Tell by Karen McManus, and I gave it 4 stars. It's basically, Karen McManus is a crime, horror, not horror, but like thriller, YA, young adult writer that is there for sure. But all her books have some kind of element of thriller or crime or suspense like that. I gave it 4 stars. Didn't really love the book. I would give it 3 stars eventually, maybe, I think. So yeah, there's that. Next book that I read was a book called Dear Stranger, I Know How You Feel. It is a self-help book, and I gave it 3 stars. I didn't like it that much. So okay, the next 3 books that I read was short novellas by Ali Hazelwood, and they are Stuck With You, which I gave 5 stars, which is my most favorite out of all of them. Then Under One Roof, which is 4 stars, and Below Zero, which I gave 3.5 stars. The rating might have changed, so just go check out my Goodreads. But yeah, they're all STEMness novels. They involve the main characters being under STEM careers, so there is that. But yeah, my most favorite was Stuck With You. Okay, the next book that I read was Kitchen, I think by Banana Yoshimoto. I think that's the author's name. I rated it 3 stars. I didn't love it too much. Again, it's an Asian literature translated into English book. I don't really know how to describe the book, but yeah, you can check out the description of the book and see if you like it, but I didn't love it. Okay, so the next book that I read was Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. Yeah, that's her name. Okay, and I gave this 4 stars, and it just follows a MMC who is deaf and small town, and the FMC who comes to live in this town, running away from her past, and they meet and their love story. It's very beautiful, and the MMC is such a beautiful person. Oh my god, he's such a sweet innocent boy, so it was very lovely read. The final book that I read is another Sally Rooney book, which is Normal People. This one I gave it 4 stars, but I actually really liked the book. Again, you have to be used to the no quotes thing, and it has already been adapted into a series by HBO. And yeah, this book, I'll just say that this book has the potential to become one of the classics in the future, so I'll give it that much. Finally, we come to December. So December books, December was not a big reading month for me. I only read 4 books. So the first book that I read in December was a poetry book called When He Leaves You, and I rated it 3 stars. Wasn't a big fan. It was okay. So the next book I read is The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, and it's the first book of the Percy Jackson series. My very close friend suggested me to read this book because this series of books was her entire childhood, and I was like, okay, let me see what the hype is about. So I read it and I love it. I gave it 5 stars, but then there was something missing. I would give it 4 stars, but then it deserved a 5 star, so I just gave it a 5 star, but really good. Okay, next book that I read was Twisted Love, and again this is part of the Twisted series by Anna Huang, and it's a 4-book series. So this is the first book of it. I liked it, but it was just like too dark of a theme for me to get into, and yeah, it's Grumpy Sunshine again, and yeah, it's literally Grumpy Sunshine because the MMC calls the FMC as Sunshine for a nickname, so you get the thing. And I don't really have to talk much about Twisted series because it's all over the internet and Bookstagram, and yeah, so there is that. I just have to say that much. So I gave it a 3.5 because I did love it so much. Okay, final book that I want to talk about in December is The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armes, the person who wrote the Spanish Love Deception. I gave it 5 stars, and I have tabbed this much, so you really get the point. But also, if you didn't get the point, it's a very good, because I will definitely be posting a 5-star reads of my 2022 video soon, so in which I'll be talking a little bit more about each of the books that I loved, which I gave 5 stars for in 2022. So look forward to the video. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope this video inspired you to read more books, and maybe my 5-star read. I will try to convince you guys to read all my 5-star reads because I love all those books. So anyway, thanks for watching for now, and I will see you next time. Bye.